Coming to you live from the Newsfirst studios in Colombo, this is your primetime news on TV1. I'm Shehan Aradunga. Let's first take a look at your headlines tonight.
Newsfirst headlines. Main sponsor.
Valuable Finance, best finance company.
KDK, the leader in indoor air quality. KDK, the reliable fan.
Rise of COVID-19 spread aggravates. More than 8,000 infections and 180 deaths in 2 weeks. President instructs CEB to settle 93 billion rupee debt to CPC. No more power cuts in Sri Lanka. Ministers provide assurance. Why are water levels of reservoirs decreasing? Will the supply of fuel resolve the power crisis? Samagijana Balawegya raises questions. Moves to sign agreement with an Indian company for a solar power plant in Sampur. Alternate sources of funding to repay ISBs. Central bank governor tells foreign media. Indian rise in Sri Lankan market. Cardinal says he will seek international support to serve justice over the April 21st attacks.
Newsfirst headlines. Main sponsor.
Valuable Finance, best finance company.
KDK, the leader in indoor air quality. KDK, the reliable fan.
Now, your top story tonight, Sri Lanka's COVID-19 cases are rising as Omicron has become the fastest spreading variant in the country. The Sri Jayawardenepura University's Allergy and Immunology as well as Cell Biology unit has said 2 sublineages of the variant are spreading rapidly.
The Sri Jayawardenepura University's Allergy, Immunology and Cell Biology unit has been testing samples for COVID-19. It says that the Omicron BA.1 and Omicron BA.2 sublineages are spreading in the country at present. More than 800 COVID-19 infections were reported daily in the last few days. The daily number of infections stood at about 600 a week ago. During the last 2 weeks, 8,986 COVID-19 infections have been reported in the country. Health Ministry data indicate that 104,211 PCR tests have been carried out during the 2-week period. Sri Lanka's COVID-19 deaths are also on the rise, with 180 deaths being recorded in the last 2 weeks. Deputy Director General of Health Services, Dr. G. Vijayasuriya said more COVID-19 infected children are receiving treatment at hospitals. The Colombo National Hospital's Deputy Director, Dr. Chandana Gatanayaka said more COVID-19 admissions have been recorded.
There
is a risk, although many people in Sri Lanka have obtained vaccines. We can see more COVID-19 infected people being admitted to the Colombo National Hospital these days. The number of people who need oxygen is increasing. We are able to face this because we prepared for this.
COVID-19 cases are rising in Sri Lanka at a time when medical experts are issuing warnings on the Omicron variant.
We can see that the Omicron variant can cause many infections in Sri Lanka. The spikes in the Omicron variant are 4 or 5 times higher than the Delta variant. That is why it's spreading rapidly. Therefore, we can say that there can be more infections and more hospitalizations. Obtaining vaccines are important to stop this. We consider this as a warning. The health authorities are taking the relevant measures to prepare for that. We need the support of the people for that. The people must act carefully by understanding that there is a danger. They must also obtain the booster vaccine without any delay.
The Health Ministry says there are 8 million booster vaccines in Sri Lanka. State Minister Professor Channa Jayasumana said steps are being taken to provide the booster vaccine before they expire.
The Pfizer vaccines that we have will expire in July. We hope to encourage the people to obtain the booster vaccines before July. If the people don't obtain these vaccines, then there is a danger that they may expire.
The Health Ministry is considering publishing a gazette on obtaining booster vaccines.
අපි කියන්නේ fully vaccine කියන එක
A person should obtain all 3 doses of the COVID-19 vaccine to be considered fully vaccinated. We have asked a team at the Ministry of Technology to design an app with a QR code. When we receive the app, we can publish a gazette and even table it in Parliament at the earliest.
කටයුතු කරන්න හැකි ඉක්මනින් කරනවා.
Now in other news, following a meeting with the President today, Minister of Power Gamini Lukuge assured that there will be no more power outages in Sri Lanka. Similarly, Minister of Energy Udaya Gamanpilla said that the government has decided to make US dollar payments to 2 oil tankers in Sri Lankan waters.
A group including the Ministers of Power and Energy met for a discussion with the President this afternoon at the Presidential Secretariat.
We presented a plan to supply power without interruptions. There are stocks of oil left and everything is in place to obtain more oil. If we are allowed to offload diesel from the tankers in our shores, we can produce electricity through both diesel and furnace oil. We have agreed to provide diesel to the West Coast power plant instead of furnace oil, which can utilize either of the two, and to provide furnace oil to the power plant in Sapugaskanda that is currently inoperational due to a shortage of furnace oil. The central bank governor was directed to pay the tanker so that diesel can be offloaded. We will now be able to supply the required diesel and furnace oil stocks. If diesel is obtained, it will be sufficient for 8 days. In the case of petrol, it will last 6 days. We were promised that LCs pertaining to importing furnace oil will be open today. Although LCs are open today, these stocks will only arrive by either the 7th or the 8th. However, there is a possibility of supplying some stocks of furnace oil to the Sapugaskanda oil refinery by either the 1st or the 2nd of February.
February 1 දෙවින්ද වෙන විට අපිට දෙවිතෙල් යම් ප්‍රමාණයක් ලබා දීමේ හැකියාව තිබෙනවා.
ඩොලර් ඔක්කොම දීලා තියෙන්නේ බය වෙන්න එපා. විසඳලා තියෙන්නේ. විසඳලා තියෙන්නේ. මම ගැටලුව විසඳලා තියෙන්නේ. තියෙන ගැටලුවක් නැහැ.
The President has also provided a directive during today's discussion to settle the debt owed by the Ceylon Electricity Board to the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation.
We pointed out that the power sector owes us 93 billion rupees. The President advised the Treasury to release funds to settle this debt.
The Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka also says there is no requirement for power outages following the government's latest decision.
The CEB had requested for a manual load shedding process from today until the 4th of February. The first stage is power outages of 1.5 hours due to shortage of furnace oil and no power generation at the West Coast power plant. The second stage is, since there will be no diesel nor petrol, 6-hour power cuts will have to be announced. The third is no diesel, no furnace oil and less generation from water, which would force them to carry out 9-hour power cuts. This is the reality. I am confident we will not have to go for such a long power cut even in the future.
අපිට මේ වගේ ලොකු power cut එකකට ඉදිරි අනාගතයේදී යන්න වෙන්නේ නැහැ.
Sri Lanka's High Commissioner to India, Milinda Morogoda, has said an agreement is to be signed to build a solar power plant in Sampur. He had said that Sri Lanka is to sign this agreement with the NTPC, which is an Indian state-owned energy company. During an interview with the Indian Express media outlet, the High Commissioner had pointed out that the NTPC company generates 60,000 megawatts of power in India. He had pointed out that Sri Lanka's whole power generation capacity is under 4,300 megawatts. The High Commissioner had noted that both sides are looking at the potential to generate 5,000 megawatts of wind energy in Mannar. He had added that exporting and importing electricity from India can be considered after these projects, as laying the cable between the two countries is not a big deal.
According to ministers, the root cause of Sri Lanka's power crisis was the inability to import oil owing to an acute shortage of dollar reserves. Sri Lanka's dollar shortage worsened to such an extent, authorities were forced to temporarily shut down the Sapugaskanda oil refinery on 2 occasions to preserve our reserves. And now, as the nation faces a fuel crisis, will the construction of a solar power plant in Sampur be the antidote? Is there an ulterior motive behind this project implemented in a backdrop of Sri Lanka's power crisis? Sri Lanka depended heavily on the Chinese-built Norachole coal power plant for power generation. The repercussions of an unhealthy dependence on this Chinese-built power plant is clear for all to see. Amid all this, talks are ongoing to hand over the construction of a solar and wind power plant to India, while another discussion is centered around sharing electricity with India through the use of power cables. Unsurprisingly, this is not the first time such a proposal has been made to share power with India. After laying the foundation stone for the Polgola reservoir in 1970, the late Minister Maithripala Senanayake confidently proclaimed that once fully operational, this hydroelectric project would enable Sri Lanka to supply power to India as well. Several decades later, however, the roles could well be reversed, with Sri Lanka ending up having to import power from India. The question is this really about power at all? Or is it about India eyeing Sampur and Manna, two hotspots in Sri Lanka of great geopolitical importance? Sri Lanka has already lost control of its key ports to India and China. Is our power independence next?
If this is the status of these services, what is the point in providing high salaries and perks to the President, the Prime Minister and the ministers? Eventually, it's the people who are paying for these salaries and facilities. They say that they would only operate these entities if there is enough fuel, and that they would just shut it down if that is not the case. We don't need a government to do that.
සෑම ජලාශයක්ම ඉතිහාසයේ හොඳම මට්ටම් වලට පිරලා තිබුණා. හැබැයි අද ජනවාරි මාසයේ මැද පහු වෙනකොට
If we analyze the water levels compared to the past years, our reservoirs were full this time. But today the water levels of these reservoirs have reduced drastically. We are still in mid-January. The current levels are similar to the levels at the end of a drought. This means that hydropower generation will be halted completely in the near future. The power generated from the hydropower plants is required for maintaining the balance in the national grid. If these hydropower plants come to a standstill, there won't be any factor to control the frequency. It's a serious situation. If this happens, regardless of the amount of fuel, coal or furnace oil that we import, there is a high risk of our electricity system falling apart.
ගෙනාවත් ඉදිරි මාස කිහිපය තුල ලංකාවේ විදුලි පද්ධතිය බිඳ වැටීමේ අනතුරක් තියෙනවා.
Why don't you ask this question from the Minister of Power? It is he who knows about these power cuts and not me.
Speaking to CNBC this morning, Governor of the Central Bank, Ajit Niwat Cabral, says Sri Lanka has to settle $12.5 billion of debt in international sovereign bonds over the next 7 years.
What is the extent of the problem Sri Lanka faces, and bring us up to speed with a total foreign debt outstanding this year, because I've seen a figure of 6.9 billion US. Is that correct?
Yes, Sri, that's correct. Now, out of the 6.9 billion, most of these loans are Sri Lankan-based loans, which we have already negotiated for rollover, as well as certain multilateral debts, which are also being funded with new receipts that are coming in. So we don't really see too much of a risk there. The only area that we do see some kind of a risk as well as concern is the international sovereign bonds, out of which we need to pay $1.5 billion back this year. And we have already paid back $500 million, and we have $1 more billion to be paid. Now, the overall situation is like this. We have approximately a further $12.5 billion of debt in ISBs to be repaid over the next 7 years. And in that context, we have already made arrangements to pay back the next loan, and we are funding that with alternative sources. And our strategy has been, since it is difficult to go to the markets at this stage, we have found alternative sources of new financing, which has assisted us to repay the debt of the ISBs.
Structure the debt, and why not go to the IMF for a relief package?
Because what I'm going to say, we have made sure that these are being financed with new sources of finance, which allows us to settle the ISB loans. We get the breathing space, as you quite rightly mentioned, which allows us thereafter to take new steps to increase our earnings as well as have new non-debt inflows. We are monetizing certain assets, and I think through that strategy, we will be able to have a lot more sustainable debt portfolio, and that's what we are aiming for.
The central bank issued a gazette making it mandatory for hotel service providers to accept payments from residents outside Sri Lanka only in foreign exchange. With the issuance of the rules, hotel service providers registered with and licensed by the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority are required to accept payments for services rendered to persons resident outside Sri Lanka only in foreign exchange, deposit such foreign currency into a business foreign currency account of the hotel service provider, or sell to a licensed bank within 3 business days, credit payments into a business foreign currency account of the hotel service provider in the event such person resident outside Sri Lanka makes payments using an electronic fund transfer card, such as a credit card, debit card, travel card, etc. These steps have been taken as Sri Lanka is going through a forex crisis. The government is struggling to find the necessary US dollars to repay these loans on the one hand, and to make the import of essential commodities including fuel, pharmaceuticals and cement on the other.
Do you think foreigners will like this? They must be informed that the payments must be made in dollars. If we ask them to do it suddenly, they will wonder why they have to pay in dollars as they paid in rupees all this time. We feel tourist arrivals may drop due to this regulation.
I don't know how much we are authorized to accept foreign currency legally, and even if the customer is also more interested in getting a better exchange rate. Officially, the banks are only paying 200 or 205 rupees for a US dollar, but outside on the market 230, 35. So they all prefer to go to the who is giving a better exchange rate.
Let's say dollar payments are made for hotel booking in cash, then how can we pay them the balance? If they ask for change in dollars, what can we do? We are also required to provide these dollars to the bank, but we are ready to exchange it at high rates. Therefore, we will go for money exchanges where we can exchange money at high rates.
It
seems that this gazette would attract dollars into Sri Lanka, but this provides a space for money laundering and also challenges many acts on this subject. This is being implemented by violating international money laundering agreements signed by Sri Lanka. Anyone paying attention to their behavior and the economy would be suspicious as to whether this is being used by them to launder their wealth that was exposed through the Pandora Papers.
While authorities seem to be implementing several measures stating that it would resolve the dollar crisis in Sri Lanka, imported rice can now be witnessed in the Sri Lankan market. This was the situation at a wholesale store in Peta today. Rice imported from India is now a common sight at retail and wholesale stores in Kandy as well.
Indian hall තමයි දැන් වැඩි යන්නේ. ගොඩක් කට්ටිය මිල හාලා ලංකා හාල් වලට වැඩි ඉන්දියන් හාල් වලට ගිහිල්ලා තියෙනවා. ලංකා හාල් ඉල්ලන්නේ නැහැ. අඩු කිල්ලනවා.
Many stores in the Nuwara town are also selling rice imported from India.
Imported Ponisamba costs 128 rupees. Nadu rice is 120 rupees. White Kakulu rice is 120 rupees. Ponisamba is 220 rupees. These are all imported rice. They have been imported from India and China. There is a difference of 38 rupees when compared to local rice.
Indian rice is also cheaper in the Anuradhapura district, which is considered to be a stronghold for paddy cultivation.
The cost of local rice is high. A kilo of local Nadu rice is sold at more than 160 rupees, but we can sell Indian rice for 120 rupees. The consumers buy the cheapest one amidst economic difficulties. I don't think the people take the taste and quality into account. We sell about 4 or 5 varieties of Indian rice. There is a high demand for Indian rice in the market.
Rice is being imported to the country at a time when farmers in the north and east are reaping their harvests. Farmers faced a multitude of challenges during the Maha season as the government changed its policy on fertilizer and agrochemicals. Although they expected to sell their produce at a reasonable rate, farmers say they have been affected as the demand for imported rice continues to increase due to its low cost. Shouldn't authorities formulate a policy that protects both the farmers and consumers?
Now, farmers in rural Sri Lanka have been affected by several problems, primarily the shortage of fertilizer. Is the government turning a blind eye to the problems faced by these farmers? A Newsfirst visited a farmer in Mahiyangania to find out the true situation.
Navaratna Banda engages in farming in Mahiyangania to feed his family of 4. Today, he has been left utterly helpless in the face of issues affecting Sri Lanka's agriculture sector.
I feel sad when looking at these fields. Usually we cultivate some vegetables in our fields, but since we don't have fertilizer, our cultivations have failed. We didn't reap a good paddy harvest this time to survive. We repay the interest on our debt using paddy.
ගත්තු මුදල් වලට පොලියක් වශයෙන් වී තමයි ඒගොල්ලෝ ගන්නෙ. මේ සැරේ මොකද වෙන්නේ? වී තාම බලාපොරොත්තුවක් නැන්නේ. අපිට තවත් මානසික අපි වැටලා ඉන්නවා මාත්‍ය අර මිනිස්සුන්ගේ ණය ගෙවා ගන්න බැරි වුණොත් ඒ වගේ මට්ටමකට දැන් වැටිලා ඉන්නේ.
Life is becoming increasingly difficult for Navaratna Banda, whose wife is also facing medical issues. His son is bedridden while his daughter is a student and is in grade 9. She engages in her studies with the help of those who provide her with required assistance. Navaratna Banda's family had not eaten lunch the day Newsfirst visited them. This was because they did not have food to cook their meals. They had managed 2 meals with rice and sambal the family had cooked for breakfast. Fraud and corruption in Sri Lanka often amounts to millions or billions of rupees. But unfortunately, people like Navaratna Banda have just 1,000 rupees in their bank accounts for their personal use. Who will come to the aid of this family that has not been able to reap a proper harvest or settle their debts? Newsfirst visited the paddy field Navaratna Banda cultivates in to get further insight into his plight.
The crops have turned yellow. Usually there would be about 8 stems branching out from one paddy seed after 1.5 months. But now there is only one stem.
මේකේ තියෙනවා මේ එක වී යටෙන් වී ගොයම් පැල 8ක් වගේ ප්‍රමාණයකට මේ පඳුරක් අල්ලන්න ඕන. මේ ඔක්කොම ගත්තොත් එහෙම තියෙන. තනි ගහ උඩට ගිහලානේ. පුරම ගත්තොත් මේ තනි ගහ තියෙන්නේ. මොනවද දැන් දාපු පොර? මේකට දැනට දාලා තියෙන්නේ මහත්තයා රජෙන් දීපු දියර පොර තියෙනවා.
We use the liquid fertilizer provided by the government. We were asked to prepare organic fertilizer. We used that organic fertilizer in these fields, but no one came and created awareness on fertilizer. We do what we want. That has caused this situation. The minister poses for photographs in fields where crops have grown properly, but we wish to tell the minister that urea has been applied secretly in fields that he is visiting. They say that urea is causing kidney ailments. Won't imported rice cause kidney ailments?
වකුගඩුව සවුත් වෙනවා උඹලට යූරියා දෙන්නේ නැහැ කියලානේ මහත්තයා. හැබැයි අපිට තියෙන්නේ වකුගඩුව සවුත් වෙන්නේ නැද්ද ඔය පිටරටින් ගේන හාල්.
Although farmers such as Navaratna Banda used organic fertilizer, they were unable to reap a satisfactory harvest and are continuing to suffer in silence. Navaratna Banda is testament to thousands of farmers in Sri Lanka who have been severely impacted by the government's sudden decision to change its fertilizer policy.
Gammatha came across the old Kataputa village in Hingaragoda in 2020 when traversing from door to door. By then, clean drinking water was a luxury to 600 families. Kidney patients were on the rise with a water purification system insufficient to meet their demands. Gammatha came forth once more to alleviate their woes. Gammatha, for the people, by the people.
Now, there's a lot more news headed your way shortly, but first let's cross over for a short commercial break. Do stay tuned.
Newsfirst, main sponsor.
Sun all-purpose disinfectant spray. Put your health first with family doctors, pediatricians, psychiatrists, cardiologists, and more specialist doctors on the ODOC app. We will also be gifting you with free delivery on Uber Eats once you consult and order your meds on ODOC.
Valuable Finance, best finance company.
KDK, the leader in indoor air quality. Over 110 years in bringing you the best of Japanese innovation and technology. KDK, the reliable fan.
Some days you might be feeling down and you want to talk to someone. Video channel a licensed psychiatrist on ODOC from the comfort and privacy of your home. ODOC is by your side, always.
Providing science education to children in far-flung villages of the country. TechBus.
Welcome back to the Primetime News on TV1. A webinar under the theme Justice for Easter Sunday Bomb Victims in Sri Lanka was held via Zoom last night. The webinar was organized by the Global Forum for Easter Sunday Bomb Victims.
We have something special here in our group in the campaign here in Italy. 3 members, from this group will be given the UN membership, and we will be getting the membership, the ID. So hopefully by the end of this month, they will have the direct access to the UN, and including myself. Schedule is done to go to different embassies, at the tragic incident that took place in April 21st. We have there had been few foreigners, lost their lives, and our team, they have identified their countries, and then we have decided to go to their embassies just to get the initiation and cooperation to force the government, we know the truth and how it is formed and how the foundation was laid and everything, and the facts and the reality, but sad fact is that the truth is going under the carpet. Therefore, we want to make more and more the international community aware.
Now, we have tried our best all along to try to get justice from our people, from our own, within our own context. But all these attempts have failed. So therefore, it does not leave us much room but to explore the possibilities of going international. And that means also going to the UN. So we are exploring that possibility, and I do not exclude that. And not only the UN, but also some of the more pertinent, powerful countries that are in relationship with us. We will try to influence those countries also. Because as Catholic Church, we are an international organization, and we have our links all over the world. And at my level as a cardinal, I have my own fellow brothers who are cardinals in different important cities and important countries. Where we will be able to do that. So I have not done that so far as a mark of hope that this will somehow find a local solution, but it becomes apparent to us that nothing is happening.
Undisclosed facts about the hand grenade discovered at the All Saints Church in Borella were also discussed at the webinar.
A dry run, or so to say, a rehearsal was carried out on the 10th of January, a day before that day. On the 11th January, after placing the bomb, he left in a vehicle. So we asked the question, did the investigators follow this?
And when I saw these scenes, it was very clear that this was a kind of a cock and bull story that has been created by the police. And the Easter attack is nothing but a typical example of political manipulation, the making use of a group of terror-minded youngsters, and having come to know about them, possibly allowing that to happen for political gain.
On the 14th, Minister Veerasekara told the media that they would identify the mastermind behind placing a hand grenade at Lanka hospitals and at the All Saints Church, and that it was the same mastermind behind both incidents. He made these remarks before recording a statement from the doctor who was arrested. Before arresting the doctor, Minister Veerasekara had said that the mastermind behind the discovery of the hand grenade at Lanka hospitals and in Borella was the same. Based on this, what we can understand is that they have planned this well even before the hand grenade was discovered at Lanka hospitals, and that they had written a script for this. But we now understand that this is a poor script. Therefore, we can see that this is nothing but a theatric. I believe that the entire country knows that this is the case.
ගොතලා පිටපත ලියලා තාම ලස්සන විදිහට මේක කරන්න උත්සාහ කිරීමක් කියලා. පිටපත තාමත්ම දුර්වල පිටපතක් කියලා අපිට තේරෙනවා. ඒ නිසා මේක අපි දකිනවා මේක නාට්‍යයක්ම තමයි කියලා. ඒක මම හිතනවා මුළු රටම දන්නවා.
Meanwhile, the coalition of Catholic lay organisation convened a media briefing today. We can see that they are coming up with stories to cover up the mistakes in their scripts. The current Minister of Public Security and several others are heading those efforts. Today, the Minister of Public Security and the security agencies are trying to suppress the Catholic priests, the cardinal, activists like Shehan Malaka and other Catholic activists. According to the recommendations of the commission that probed the April 21st attacks, and according to other evidence that is available, the officials who should be arrested are holding big positions in the government. Why is the government hiding the investigations carried out against them? Who is the government trying to protect? Sarath Veerasekara has been infected by COVID-19. We wish him good health since he knows a lot about the April 21st attacks. His family members are saying that his life is at huge risk. The officer named Saman Veerasinghe, who investigated the Saind Marudu bomb explosion, died after contracting COVID-19. It is suspicious how people who know the truth are dying under mysterious circumstances.
Opposition leader Sajid Premadasa expressed the following views in Middenia today.
Instead of having 3 meals daily, our people are only having 2 meals today. Even for that, they have to undergo severe hardships. The first thing this government did when they came to power was banning fertilizer imports. This decision had a heavy impact on the livelihoods of farmers. After blocking the main mode of income of farmers, the cursed government increased the prices of essential goods. After creating all these misery, now they are using the pandemic as an excuse for this crisis. If that is the reason, what has COVID-19 done to Singapore? Their economy is growing day by day. It is the same even in India. China is the birthplace of COVID-19. However, their economy is growing rapidly. A similar economic growth can be observed in countries like Bangladesh, Vietnam, Cambodia, Indonesia and Malaysia. Didn't the pandemic affect these countries? Wasn't the Delta variant spreading in these countries? Therefore, it is clear now that this government is lying. They are only capable of keeping us in the dark. What sort of misery is this? Can we continue like this? The opposition leader made these remarks while attending the opening ceremony of the Samagi Jana Balawegaya party office at the Mulkirigala electorate in Hambantota.
And with that, we must cross over to another short commercial break. We'll be right back.
One disinfectant to keep your hands, home surfaces, electronic devices and personal belongings safe from bacteria, virus and fungi. Sri Lanka's first SLS certified disinfectant, now with lemon fresh and ice pine fresh fragrances. Sun all-purpose disinfectant spray.
Invest in your health today on ODOC, and in return, you will live a happier, healthier life. We will also be gifting you with free delivery on Uber Eats once you consult and order your medication on ODOC.
providing science education to children in far-flung villages of the country. Tech Bus.
Welcome back. The National Unity Alliance convened a media briefing in Colombo today.
Goods are there in the market when Bandulu Gunawardena goes on inspection tours. After he completes the inspection, there are no goods. They import garlic and sell the stock secretly. They import sugar. However, they cause losses of 46 million by reducing taxes. People can't stay at home as there are explosions. Can the country move forward or not? It can't move forward. Now they must convene a meeting with all political parties and explain the exact situation. We won't have petrol in another 7 days. They began imposing power cuts from today. Gas explosions are occurring. They are importing rice. China was the first country to manufacture plastic rice. The cabinet spokesmen don't have answers as to whether we are going to receive this plastic rice or the rice cultivated using organic fertilizer. They say that they will have to ask that from Bandulu Gunawardena. The cabinet ministers don't know the type of rice that we are receiving free of charge from China. Sri Lanka Pudujana Peramuna activist Shiraj Yunus obtained the membership of the National Unity Alliance today.
Now in some good news, the University of Peradeniya has been ranked among the top 500 universities in the world by the Times Higher Education ranking for the third consecutive time.
The University of Peradeniya is recognized nationally and the world over as a leading university in Sri Lanka, as well as a university that has fostered many intellectuals over the years. Recently, the University of Peradeniya took Sri Lanka to the world once more when it was ranked among the best 500 universities in the world according to the Times Higher Education World University Rankings 2022. It is also noteworthy that 9 professors of the University of Peradeniya have been ranked according to the World University Researchers Rankings. Moreover, the university has been placed 215th among 1,000 universities worldwide according to the Green Metric Ranking 2021 carried out by UI Green Metric in Indonesia.
As a result of working hard over a period of time, I am very happy to say during last 3 consecutive years, University of Peradeniya has been ranked among the first 500 universities in the world. The fact that we are among the first 500 means that we belong to the first 4% or the top 4% of universities in the world, and it is an achievement thanks to the commitment of our staff and also the students and the other stakeholders. Looking at the research contribution, and I'm very happy to say once again that among the top 2% of researchers in the world, University of Peradeniya has 9 of them. University of Peradeniya has decided to establish a center for community relations, and that will happen during the course of this month.
The world celebrated the 4th International Day of Education under the theme Changing Course, Transforming Education in the hopes of reducing the gap of education. Newsfirst Ahmed Buso reports.
The United Nations General Assembly proclaimed 24th of January as International Day of Education in celebration of the role of education for peace and development. Education is a basic human right. It is a public good and a public responsibility. Today, in the world, over 250 million children and youth still do not attend school, and over 615 million children and adolescents cannot read or do basic math. Their right to education has been violated. So the question remains as to if the world could ever reach 100% literacy. Newsfirst inquired regarding the present education status in the country from Professor Kapila Pereira, Secretary to the Education Ministry.
Actually, the online education is a makeshift arrangement to meet the contingency situations of the disaster situation. That is being world over. We need to make sure that we bring students into classroom and have the physical interaction. Therefore, we have positives and we identify the negatives and we are able to capitalize on the online education technique. We have given the freedom to those who have been able to catch up with the online and other modes, and this total freedom is given to the school so that the teacher is able to tell us whether all students will go to the same level in whatever the strategies that they use. So for that, NIE has calculated and given us the time till end of March.
Meanwhile, students returned to their classroom studies, which was disrupted by the COVID-19 pandemic, sweeping the country after months of studying online. Many of them will experience new challenges as they struggle to adapt to daily routines and demands that could raise.
Actually, despite the pandemic, everything, I think in terms of basic measures of it, we were doing okay before the pandemic, and I think we can catch up. Before the pandemic, the literacy rate was 92%. I mean, we can easily go to 100% if we want. There's concern that, children did not get an education during the pandemic. Yes, that's true. A survey by Learn Asia, it's a scientific survey of more than 2,000 households. We found that 85% of children received some sort of assistance. And I think the government needs to step up and help the teachers and parents to go the next step.
Sri Lanka's education expenditure has been lagging behind regional peers. Sri Lanka's highest expenditure on education was in 2017, where expenditure as a percentage of GDP was 2.8% and 14.5% as a percentage of the total expenditure.
With US ordering their diplomatic missions to withdraw from Ukraine amid growing fears of a Russian invasion in Ukraine, the UK has also begun to withdraw their diplomatic staff from the British embassy in Ukraine. Now, meanwhile, members of the NATO alliance, including Denmark, Spain, Bulgaria and the Netherlands, are sending more fighter jets and warships to Eastern Europe to bolster defences in the region.
පෝලිං වල ඉඳලා. ස්ට්‍රයික් එක එහෙම කියලා හරිනවා දුප්පත් අපිට. සල්ලි වලට ගන්න බෙහෙත් තියනවාද ෆාමසි වලින් අරගෙන.
අසරණකමට තමයි මේ රජයේ ස්පිරිතාල වලට එන්නේ. මේ බස් එකටත් එන්න බොහොම අමාරුයි. මේවා කළා ඉල්ලගෙන ආවේ. දැන් මට යන්න කායෙන් හරි ඉල්ලගන්න තත්ත්වේ ඉන්න මිනිස්සෙක් මම.
මම පහට ගෙදරින් ආවා. පින්න මේ කරන අපරාධේ මොකද්ද කියලා මහත්තයලා චුට්ටක් බලන්න. මම මේ මිනිස්සයා දැන් ආයෙ අරගෙන එන්නද බලන්න මේ තුවාල වලට බේත් දාන්න.
The medical staff staged a protest along the Colombo-Kurunegala main road. The assistant police superintendent of Kurunegala arrived at the scene afterwards. He said the suspects behind the assault on the doctor would be arrested. The medical staff called off the protest thereafter.